Welcome to this explainer. Okay, we are diving straight into one of the wildest geopolitical paradoxes out there. Think about the United States and the United Kingdom. We're talking about the two most powerful nations in the Western world, right? But their history? It's basically a dramatic story of two siblings who went from literally drawing blood to sharing the deepest, most heavily guarded military secrets on the planet.
It really is the ultimate historical irony. I mean, the US fought a brutal, bloody war, specifically to get away from Britain. But today, they're essentially best friends on the world stage. So how on earth did that happen? We're going to unpack exactly why the US and the UK are like those siblings who used to fight tooth and nail, but now, when it comes right down to it, they fundamentally cannot live without each other.
Section 1. The Messy Family Breakup, a Geopolitical Divorce.
You see, the year 1776 wasn't just your standard historical conflict. It was a full-blown, dramatic family feud over rules, control, and, of course, money. Think about that famous colonial slogan, "No taxation without representation." Essentially, that was just the rebellious younger sibling, the 13 colonies, screaming that they wanted an equal say in the household rules. Britain tried to impose taxes, the colonists had no voice in Parliament, and while the tension just kept boiling until it exploded into the American Revolution, it was an incredibly emotional and ideological divorce.
And even after the Declaration of Independence, that tension didn't just vanish overnight. They actually had to get in one last big fight, the War of 1812. It was kind of an awkward rematch where no clear winner really emerged, but both sides finally realized that constant fighting was just exhausting. Things finally started to cool off around 1872. That's when they settled the Alabama claims, and Britain actually paid the U.S. $15.5 million for damages caused by British-built Confederate ships during the Civil War. It was a massive transition from outright hostility to practical legal arbitration.
Section 2. Culture Clash. Siblings Divided. So, after the shooting finally stopped, these estranged siblings went through this hilarious phase of growing apart. And the linguistic irony here is just amazing. They share the same language, which actually causes massive confusion. I mean, you order chips in the UK, you get fries in the US, you say football in America, and you are talking about a completely different sport than the rest of the planet. And my personal favorite, pants. That means trousers in the US, but underwear in the UK. It is the absolute classic sibling dynamic, doing things just differently enough to annoy each other.
But underneath all that banter, they are completely obsessed with each other. Think about the ultimate irony. Americans fought a brutal war to escape the monarchy, yet today they remain absolutely captivated by the British royal family. And the cultural exchange is just endless. They're constantly trading Marvel blockbusters for James Bond, endlessly debating whether the US or UK version of The Office is better, and sharing a massive music history that stretches all the way from the Beatles to modern pop. Their cultural DNA is totally intertwined.
Moving on to Section 3. Reunited by the World Wars. Eventually, these estranged siblings were forced back together, not by choice at first, but by the massive existential threats of the 20th century. Just to put it into perspective, think about the number $31.4 billion. $31.4 billion. That was the unprecedented scale of American support for Britain during World War II. Through Lend-Lease aid, the U.S. pumped tanks, planes, food, and supplies totaling over $31 billion to ensure Britain survived against Nazi Germany. It was way more than a transaction. It was a vital lifeline that forged an absolute, unbreakable bond of trust.
And it was exactly this era that gave birth to the title of our explainer. Back in 1946, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill officially coined the term the special relationship. He used it to describe this newly forged, unbreakable bond of military, intelligence, and diplomatic cooperation that rose right out of the ashes of the war. They had literally gone from absolute enemies to the absolute closest of allies.
Which brings us to Section 4, the ultimate power duo. The Cold War that followed transformed them from temporary wartime buddies into a highly integrated geopolitical and economic powerhouse. The sheer scale of their economic integration today is staggering. Based on historical data, the US has $324 billion directly invested in the UK, and the UK has $282 billion invested right back into the US. Their modern economies are so deeply intertwined that they literally depend on each other to succeed. Hundreds of thousands of people in each country wake up every single day and go to work for a company owned by the other nation.
But it goes so much deeper than just money. Think about their deep state integration. Take the Five Eyes Alliance, a post-World War II intelligence sharing pact. Essentially, the UK became this indispensable, highly trusted intelligence hub for the US globally. They share top-secret intelligence that they wouldn't even dream of sharing with anyone else, dividing up the globe to monitor threats together in a highly coordinated, incredibly secretive way.
And this military bonding, it continues to shape the modern world. They are the foundational leaders of NATO. Their navies and air forces have fought side by side in joint combat operations like the War on Terror, and they even share highly sensitive nuclear weapons technology. Right up to today, they are bound by cutting-edge defense agreements like the AUKUS Pact, partnering on nuclear-powered submarines in the Indo-Pacific. It's a level of global trust that is just incredibly rare.
But, no family relationship is without its drama. Section 5. Future Tests and Tensions. Today, this highly sentimental relationship is being severely tested by a much more transactional, interest-based reality. Impartially speaking, Brexit fundamentally altered the dynamic. For decades, the US always viewed the UK as its reliable bridge into the European Union. Without that bridge, recent US administrations have definitely started to view the UK more pragmatically when it comes to trade and European influence, often prioritizing quick state-level trade memorandums over a massive, comprehensive free trade agreement.
And we've seen how quickly things can flare up. Let's walk through that wild diplomatic rupture in 2026. The US expressed a renewed desire to annex Greenland. Well, the UK opposed this, backed Denmark, and joined a military operation called Arctic Endurance. In retaliation, the US actually threatened massive 10 to 25% tariffs on all British goods. It was an unbelievable stress test for the alliance. Now, fortunately, both sides stood down and de-escalated the situation at the World Economic Forum in Davos, but it proved that even the closest of siblings can end up in a bitter standoff when their strategic interests collide.
This brings us to a really fascinating imbalance today. American leaders increasingly view the alliance through a pragmatic, transactional lens. They're asking, what can the UK offer us right now? Meanwhile, British officials and media often heavily emphasize the sentimental, emotional, and historically special nature of the bond. It's literally like one sibling looking at a cold, hard business partnership, while the other is flipping through a sentimental family photo album.
Which leaves us with a final, really provocative question. Can this historic sibling bond survive the pressures of a highly transactional future? I mean, yes, they have shared values, shared language, and shared blood spilled on the exact same battlefields. But as global power shifts into entirely new arenas, like artificial intelligence, cutting-edge tech, and space exploration, is their shared history going to be enough to keep them united? It's a fascinating dynamic to watch unfold. Thanks so much for joining me for this